Thank you for joining us for our Community Outreach Forum to discuss the 2022 REACH Code initiatives. My name is Hipólito Olmos, and I'm the building official for the City of Gilroy and will be the MC for today's outreach meeting. The purpose of this outreach meeting is to provide and gather information regarding the possible adoption of REACH codes. During this presentation, we will go into more detail of what a REACH code is, but for now, I would like to describe it as a locally adopted enhancement to the California building codes. Next slide, please. Logistics, a couple of logistical items. This presentation will be recorded and will be made available online within a week. We will have a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. If you have a question or comment during the presentation, please use the Q&A button located at the bottom of your screen. These questions and comments are being monitored by staff and will be responded to. As I noted earlier, a link to the presentation will be provided. Next slide, please. Introductions. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Hipólito Olmos. I'm the building official for the City of Gilroy. We have Marco Ramagnoli. He's also with the City of Gilroy. He's our planning technician. We have Anthony Yulo. He's with the Silicon Valley Clean Energy. He's a senior manager for the public sector services. We also have Peter Mustachi. He's also with SVCE. He's on the energy service lead. We have Farhad Farahmand. He's with TRC and he's a senior project manager. And we also have Mayra Vega with TRC and she's a senior project manager. So what we will be discussing today. Community choice energy is the ability for a municipality like the City of Gilroy to choose who they obtain their energy from. For the City of Gilroy residents, the choice is provided by Silicon Valley Clean Energy. Some of the benefits of electrification includes a reduction of carbon emissions, the improvement of air quality, the reduction of the initial building costs, and it's one of the least expensive ways to reduce carbon emissions. We will be you will receive an introduction to the REACH codes. REACH codes are an enhancement of the adopted building codes and a path towards a more safe, sustainable, and environmentally friendly energy usage for citizens. At the end of this presentation, we will have a Q&A section. So please type your questions in the Q&A area below, and we will answer them at the end. Next slide, please. I will be executing a poll. Let me just get to it. To give us a better idea of our audience today, we ask you to participate in our first poll. We will be sharing the results of the poll at the end. Go ahead and you should have seen the poll launch. The first question is, do you live or work in the City of Gilroy? Is your current home all electric or is it a mixed fuel home? Also, question number 3 is, how familiar are you with REACH codes? Not at all familiar, slightly familiar, somewhat familiar, or moderately familiar? I'll give you guys about another 30 seconds or so. Okay, 15 more seconds. I see there's still a couple of answers coming in. I'm going to give it a couple more seconds, another 20 seconds.
There's a question being asked, where do we fill out the questionnaire? It's on the screen, Jan. So you should be able to click on the answers directly. There's a poll on the screen.
Was Jen able to?
She or he, Jan, could be either. It says not on my screen. I'm not sure why. We'd be happy to send that to you afterward. If you want to give us your email address, we can take care of it that way. I'm sorry for that.
I'm going to end the poll and share results. So, do you live or work in Gilroy? We had, well, you know, almost half and half.
We're not seeing the results like we did this afternoon. There we go. Thank you.
Okay, it was just taking a second there. Do you live or work in the city of Gilroy? 40% of participants, yes. 60% no. Is your current home all electric? None. Mixed fuel? Everybody. How familiar are you with reach codes? 20% not familiar. 60% moderately familiar. That's great. And then 1 is extremely familiar. That's awesome. So thank you all for participating with us and sharing that valuable information. Next slide. Next, I believe Tony Anthony will be talking about Silicon Valley Clean Energy. Take it away.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Hippolito. Silicon Valley Clean Energy is your community choice energy provider. We provide energy for 13 Santa Clara County communities. The communities in Santa Clara County that we don't provide energy for include San Jose, because they have their own community choice energy program, Palo Alto and Santa Clara. Those latter two have a public energy agency in which they do all the energy work themselves. So what we do is service with PG&E all of the customers in these jurisdictions. Next slide. As this slide indicates, we're in the business of buying energy from the source. So that left column is the SVCE column. We buy and build energy supplies. So we go ahead and from a variety of sources buy energy. All of it is carbon free. So this includes solar energy, wind energy, hydroelectric energy, and geothermal energy. And so all the energy that we provide to the grid is carbon free. Once it's on the grid, PG&E is able to deliver it to you. They are still the entity that delivers, that does the transmission of energy to the city of Gilroy and the distribution of it within the city and delivers it to all of you as customers. And then they also do the billing. And then you, all as customers, benefit from the clean energy and the local control of having Silicon Valley Clean Energy. In the 5 years that we've been in existence, we just celebrated our 5-year anniversary, we have reduced greenhouse gas emissions in our service territory by 35% compared to the 2015 baseline. That 35% is the amount of emissions that were associated with electricity in the past. And now that we're delivering carbon-free electricity, it all has gone away. We, in the meantime, have invested over $1.6 billion in new and refurbished renewable energy projects. So this includes solar and wind and geothermal. And because our rates are slightly lower than PG&E's, we've saved customers in our service territory $77 million over the last 5 years. That means literally their bills were $77 million less than they would have been if we did not exist. And in Gilroy, that's over $4.6 million that Gilroy customers were able to use to buy other things or put in the bank or who knows what, because we've existed over the past 5 years. So as I said, $4.6 million for Gilroy alone. It's increasing every day. All right, next slide. And you might ask yourselves, why are we here and why should we electrify? And Peter's going to go ahead and take over and describe that now. Go ahead, Peter.
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, so we're talking about electrification today for a couple of reasons, as Hippolito touched on in the start, around health and safety, around affordability for new construction, and around cleanliness of the environment. And when we talk about electrification or electrified homes, really what we mean is homes that have all electric appliances, so space heating, water heating, cooking, versus a mixed fuel home, which relies on a combination of both, so it has electricity and natural gas. The main reason that we want to talk more about electrification, it has to do with indoor air quality and health. A lot of us grew up in mixed fuel homes, and it seems normal and we don't really think about it, but more and more studies have been coming out, especially recently, that there are more dangers with this than we realize when we're burning natural gas in an indoors environment. And this is especially impactful to the most vulnerable of our community, so children and the elderly in particular. Children who grow up in homes with gas ranges and stoves, for example, are significantly more likely to develop asthma. And the Bay Area appliances, gas appliances together, emit more nitrous oxide than the combination of power plants in our area. Data from the National Fire Protection Agency indicates to us that gas appliances are also more dangerous overall. When we look at the number of residential fires, over 60% are attributed to cooking and heating equipment, a majority of which is from gas appliances, versus less than 10%, which are attributed to electrical infrastructure related fires. Another thing that we're learning as more and more electric homes are built and studied is that building all electric saves money for new construction. Significant costs are gained in the development of a new home when we don't include the gas infrastructure, so the lateral off of the main pipe in the street and the gas piping distribution throughout the house. These end up being significant costs that can be avoided through all electric construction. And really, building all electric now saves significant money in the future. We know that California is headed towards carbon neutrality goals, and there will come a point in time when electrification retrofits may become requirements for existing buildings. And so the cost to do it later will be significantly greater. So that's why we really want to talk about this opportunity to capture this for new construction at the time that these houses are built. Electrification is also more climate friendly, and by that we mean lower carbon emissions. Here we're looking at the carbon emissions in a typical year from a mixed fuel house compared to an all electric house. And this reflects the average grid emissions for the California electrical grid. So currently, as of 2020, an all electric home would result in a 45% decrease in carbon emissions. And you can see that decrease growing as we move towards California's carbon neutrality goals in 2045. I will point out that today SDCE serves carbon-free electricity. So for jurisdictions in our territory like Gilroy, this carbon savings is even greater. We hear concerns that electrification will reduce the reliability of appliances to operate during public safety power shutoffs, like PSPS events that PG&E conducts. But we do want to kind of pause here and remind people that modern appliances that are served by gas typically won't operate safely when the electric power is off. So for example, space heating through a central furnace or air conditioning heating system requires electricity for the fans to operate. Gas water heaters, modern gas water heaters require electronic ignition. They may include small pumps that rely on electricity. Most modern gas stoves require electricity. They could be operated, they could be lit manually, but this isn't necessarily a safe way to operate them. And gas dryers rely on electricity to run the motor to turn the clothes. In addition to electrifying buildings, we see a growing trend of electrification of vehicles in California. Last year, over 250,000 EVs were sold in California, 12.5% of total passenger vehicle sales. And we just see this number growing and growing in the future. This does bring up serious issues, though, not least of which is the infrastructure to charge these vehicles. And this really becomes a focal point for multifamily, especially in low-income neighborhoods. Multifamily residents in general have the least agency towards getting electric vehicle charging installed. They have to bring an electrician out, which requires approval of the building owner, which can be very difficult in and of itself. It can be prohibitively expensive for a tenant to try to get EV charging installed. And based on analysis done by the California Energy Commission, they estimate that we're going to need 5 million chargers by the end of 2030 in order to support the rate of EV growth. And so that, based on their analysis, we're falling short of meeting these needs. And so REACH codes, which we'll talk about more, provide an opportunity on a local level to really take control of this issue and try to lead faster. And we know that we're not going fast enough at a statewide level. And so it's an opportunity to address, especially for multifamily tenants, access to charging power so that they too can electrify their vehicles in time. And one last point around EV charging infrastructure, it's significantly cheaper, 4 to 6 times cheaper to install during new construction compared to coming in later and trying to add it. These graphs show the average cost per charger put in for multifamily or multi-unit dwellings of different sizes, as well as a commercial office building. And we see reports of retrofit costs that can even exceed what you see on the screen. So with that, I'll pass back to Tony to talk a little bit more about REACH codes and what they are.
Thanks, Peter. Next slide. So a REACH code is kind of like the name implies. It's a way of reaching up and doing something more than where you are. So it is a way for Gilroy to move towards a safe, sustainable, and environmentally friendly energy goals when it comes to new buildings. So it is a locally adopted enhancement to the state code. So the state adopts a building code, and then the local agencies have to adopt it as well. And when they do, they're able to add enhancements to the building code that reflect local values. In the last building code cycle, which was in 2019, 12 of the 13 SVCE agencies did adopt REACH codes of some form, and we'll describe those in a moment. But one agency that didn't happens to be the City of Gilroy, where we're meeting tonight. Next slide, please. So currently, the current code cycle allows mixed fuel buildings to be built. So there are energy standards, but they can be built with a combination of electrical and natural gas appliances. Without a REACH code, many of the buildings, in fact, most new buildings, will be built with the use of both electricity and natural gas. Those jurisdictions that have adopted REACH codes, most of them, instead wind up with buildings that are mainly electric or all electric in many instances. This reduces the emissions associated with the buildings, makes them cleaner greener and safer inside as well. Importantly, each jurisdiction adopts their own approach. It's up to them to do it. There isn't a mandate. Next slide, please. So in the 2019 cycle, these were the 12 agencies. This is what they did. So 2 of the agencies adopted an electric preferred code, which allowed mixed fuel buildings to be built, but required some additional wiring, both in the panel and in the building itself, to support the future electrification of those buildings. Some adopted a mostly electric code, which said most of the significant appliances that use natural gas, that being the water heater and the space heater, they had to be electric. But some of the other appliances, like the stove, for example, could continue to be gas. 5 of the agencies adopted an all-electric code, which really said that there are some exemptions or exceptions, but in most instances, the entire building is going to be all electric. And 1 agency, coincidentally, the agency closest to you, adopted what's considered to be a gas ban, whereas almost all buildings are built exclusively with electricity with no natural gas infrastructure. Next slide, please. When it comes to EV charging, 9 of the 13 agencies adopted some enhancement to the state code requiring additional charging infrastructure to be installed. And here we're talking mostly about multifamily and non-residential buildings, because single-family residential buildings typically have a garage. I mean, anything built today pretty much has a garage if it's a single-family dwelling. And it's fairly easy for the occupant or owner of that home to install a charger in their garage. On the other hand, if you're in a multifamily setting where there's carports and maybe no assigned parking, or certainly in a non-residential setting without assigned parking, it's very difficult to charge an electric vehicle while you're parked there. And so these codes are focused on those types of uses and encouraging and requiring the installation of additional EV chargers. Next slide, please. So because of the success of the REACH codes in 2019, this cycle of building code, because every 3 years there's a new building code that comes out, is much more oriented towards all electric construction. So electric heat pumps, which is the modern efficient way of heating a building, in residential are essentially required, and non-residential must include one or both of water heating via heat pump or HVAC, depending on the building type. When it comes to residential buildings, if someone goes all electric, they get a performance credit in their calculations for that building. If they're sticking with gas stoves, for example, they actually have a bit of a penalty. They have to include ventilation at a higher rate to make that indoor air quality safe. Pre-wiring for residential dwellings is required for future electrification, as well as pre-wiring for energy storage in the future. For non-residential, there's solar voltaics and battery storage are required at some levels. So these are advances in the new energy and the new building code that Gilroy will be adopting this fall. These are not REACH codes, this is the new base code. Next slide. And with that, I'm gonna turn it back to Hippolito to go over poll number 2.
Thanks, Son. So I am gonna execute the poll number 2. Let me just get that real quick. You should see it on your screen. Let me know when you see it.
We got it.
Okay. So poll number 2. What is your top concern about all electric construction? Question number 2. What is the most important reason you think Gilroy should consider electric REACH codes? And question number 3 is, after this presentation in general, how likely would you be to support REACH codes?
I would imagine everyone's seen this, but you need to scroll down to see those yourself. 2 and 3.
I see we have some pretty good participation. We'll give it a few more. This poll was a little bit longer. Maybe another 20 seconds.
Someone has asked us if we can post it again. I'm still seeing it on my screen.
Maybe they X'd out of it.
They might be able to hit the poll button in the Zoom menu to bring it back up.
Anonymous, please give it a go.
Mhm. Do you know if that worked for them?
They will need to tell us in the Q&A if so.
Give it another 10 seconds or so. I don't see any changes. Okay. With that, I will end the poll and share the results. So, what is your top concern about all electric? 14%. Heating homes will be much more expensive with electric than gas. 14% don't like cooking on electric range. 29% electric panels will have to be upgraded. 14% power outages, and 29% have no concerns. Question number 2, what is the most important reason you think Gilroy should consider electric reach codes? 33% is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Another 33% to expand EV charging access to more. And then another third or 33%, I don't see a reason to consider. Question number 3, after this presentation in general, how likely would you be to support reach codes? 33% extremely unlikely. 67% extremely likely. Okay. I will stop sharing here.
And I'll just note, since some people had a challenge getting to the poll, we're going to email tomorrow the poll out to Jan and Karen. I see that you indicated it didn't work to see it again. If you want to put your email address in the Q&A, we will send you directly via email the poll for you to fill out as well. And if anyone else was not able to see the poll and wants us to email it to them, you can either put your email address in the Q&A, or our last slide is going to have my email address on it, and you can send me an email and I will then email it out to you if you don't want your email address published publicly. Either way. Back to you, Hippolito. Thank you.
Next slide, please. So this is the discussion and Q&A section. What are your hopes and concerns for reach coding community? What are other questions you have? We just did a poll, and so, you know, if you have concerns one way or another, you can raise your hand, and we will unmute you and you can ask your questions, and the panelists here will, you know, try and answer your questions or your concerns. So if you have, you know, questions or you have any concerns, I see we have some folks with their hands raised. So Peter, will you, or is it going to be Marco?
I can go ahead and one by one allow people to talk.
Fantastic. Thank you, Marco. Marco, as you do, let them know who you've unmuted so that they can start talking.
So I promoted Jan Guffey. You should have gotten an option to accept it, and then you'll have to unmute yourself to begin talking.
Am I unmuted?
You are.
Okay,
Welcome,
good.
Jan.
My question is, since Gilroy was the only city in the area that didn't adopt the REACH codes before, how do you think that our city council will adopt some form of REACH codes now?
I think that's the question best answered by you, Hippolito.
Jan, we don't know. We don't know. Right now, we're doing outreach to the developers. We're doing outreach community members. We're going to gather information. We're going to bring it back to council. What we found from our community, we will then formulate a REACH code, either appliances. It may be none. It may be just appliances. It may just be EVs. It may be electrification. It may be mixed fuel. So currently, right now, we have not formulated anything that's going to be presented to council. I will later on in the presentation be showing a timeline, a general timeline of where we're going to be at. So we will go back to council at some point and get feedback from them. And then we will come back with a proposal for a REACH, and they will either vote yes or vote no. But right now, we're really in the stages of gathering information, educating the community and developers on what a REACH code is, addressing their concerns. I noticed we were somewhat polarized on either for or against, pretty evenly. And so it's our jobs to listen to community members and really understand what the concerns are. And with your feedback and your participation, we will take this information to council, and they will provide us with better direction of where we're going to go with this. Great question.
If I can add,
Hmm?
Hippolito, that you did ask them about this, and they asked you to go to the community and do just what we're doing now. So they are aware of the process going on. Thanks.
Okay, I am now going to promote Dashiell Leeds.
Hi,
Hey.
my name is Dashiell Leeds. I'm the Sierra Club's conservation organizer. We're in strong support of the REACH codes. I'm really excited to see the team that's working on this. I think they have some great folks working on this code. I guess my only question is, would Gilroy be considering transitioning the requirements from a REACH code specifically into something like a standalone municipal ordinance that could exist outside of the REACH code and therefore outside of the 3-year code cycle update? That way we don't necessarily have to come back every 3 years and readopt the building codes that we already have. If we get a strong code this cycle, we could get it in a municipal ordinance and basically just lock that in until someone decides to come back and revisit it. Other than that, just wanted to say thanks for all your hard work, and super excited to see Gilroy hopefully join the other cities in the county with clean all-electric buildings that are cheaper to build and healthier to live in. Seems like a win-win to me.
Michelle, thank you. I'm going to let Tony speak on
Sure.
the vehicle we're going to use to adopt a REACH codes, because my understanding is although you do it through an ordinance, you still have to revisit it possibly if there's changes. But I'll let Tony speak to that. Go ahead, Tony.
Of course. So there is a path of adopting an ordinance that does not have to be revisited with the building code, because it's engaged. It's a ordinance that's passed using the community's police powers and isn't passed as an amendment to the building code. So the answer to the question is it's much too early to determine. That is an option that will be presented to city staff and the city council, but we'll see in what direction people want to go.
Okay, I am now going to promote Maria Aguilar as the next question.
Hello, Maria. Maybe you're muted.
Looks like she
Marco, can you
disappeared.
unmute her, please? There it is.
Oh, no wonder you can't hear me.
There we
There you
There we
are.
have
Welcome. Thank you
It
for
helps.
attending.
It helps to unmute. You know, I'm really excited about going forward with making changes. I didn't realize the emissions that affect residents because you know, I'm clueless to this. But I recently read a report by Stanford that kind of highlighted the effect of using gas stoves and so forth. And I think that's one thing the community may not be aware of. So that's my only input on here. I already have solar panels. So if I were to go completely electric, I would be fine.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback, Maria.
Okay, I'm now going to promote Jonathan Fox.
Hello, Jonathan.
Jonathan, you're on mute.
Hello, panel. Thanks for the presentation. Jonathan Fox
Pleasure.
here.
Pleasure.
I have high hopes for the REACH codes. I think promoting all electric buildings and increasing the number of EV spaces per development project will really help support the city's goals in terms of energy conservation, alternative fuel vehicles, preparing or reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So I'm full in support of the city. Unfortunately, being the last one to adopt REACH codes, but better late than never. My question for the panel is, are other member cities in Silicon Valley clean energy, what strategies have they implemented to make developers and property owners aware of newly adopted codes?
Peter, would you like to answer that or would you like me to?
Go ahead, Tony.
Oh, did you say go ahead?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Thanks.
Well, every jurisdiction has a different set of requirements that is contained in their municipal code. And so they use all kinds of different mechanisms to inform the development community about their codes. So we've talked to all of our 13 jurisdictions at one time or another. And this is a question that they have. Standardization amongst agencies is desired. But really, they all communicate differently. You know, when you have jurisdictions as different as, you know, the highly urbanized kind of Cupertino modern place and Los Altos Hills, which is, you know, up in the hills, a small place, or Monte Sereno, which has a bunch of large residential dwellings and not much else. You have a bunch of different mechanisms. So what we would do is we would be available, if Gilroy does adopt a REACH code, we would be available to support Hippolito and other city staff in developing documents or code language, whatever they need to inform the development community and the residents about the code as it is. I'm sorry I can't be more specific, but really there's just a variety of means that people have of communicating with their customers.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I am now going to promote Enrique.
Hello, Enrique.
Enrique, you should be prompted to accept being promoted to panelist.
You're muted, Enrique.
Okay, I think you got. Yeah. Okay, hi.
Hello.
This is Enrique with the Santa Clara County Association of Realtors. So you guys are discussing reach codes as though we have an option to maintain mixed appliances in the future. It was my understanding that within the past 5 years or so, the state legislature and the governor adopted and passed a mandate requiring that all new housing construction from whatever year forward already be electric. Is this not the case, or did something change?
I'm happy to jump in on this. So the California statewide code that's been approved for that'll be effective January 1st, 2023, is what we're calling electric preferred. Electric appliances are not required. They're still allowing mixed fuel homes. There is compliance credit given to homes that are built with electric appliances.
Okay, so yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So my understanding was there was a law passed recently that mandated that all homes be electric anyway. But in any case, I mean, that notwithstanding, if something has changed, then that's fine. The second part of my question then is, are you guys really just considering these codes to apply going forward, or are you considering point of sale mandates that would require a retrofit of existing homes to be all electric, or is this just for homes going forward that you're considering?
This would just be for new homes going forward. So this would not be retroactive. It wouldn't apply to existing homes. It wouldn't involve like a point of sale on appliances.
Okay.
And yeah, just to circle back to the first question, state code has passed requirements that all new homes be built with solar panels, and they will be requiring pre-wiring for batteries. You don't have to install a battery, but you have to have the electrical infrastructure there to connect one in the future.
Okay, yeah, I see. And then just as a parting comment, while you're doing your outreach, I was just wondering if you guys would be interested in, speaking to electricians and whatnot, and including their input, because one of the concerns that a lot of people that we speak to have with regards to the reach codes is that people's affordability crises kind of tends to increase when the cost of electrifying everything from heating your house to heating water to heating, for example, if somebody has like a jacuzzi or anything that you do with gas and you replace it with electricity, especially with Pacific Gas and Electric is one of the most expensive energy utilities on a per kilowatt hour basis, more than SoCal Edison, more than any public utility. Those costs will, those monthly energy costs, especially the more people you have in your family, will tend to skyrocket. And so that's a challenge for affordability in the Bay Area in particular. So that's just one thing that we wanted to communicate to everybody. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter, do you want to speak on that, or Myra, can you speak about that?
Yeah, I was just gonna acknowledge the last comment, and thank you for bringing that up. Affordability is at the crux of what we're doing here. We're looking at passing reach codes equitably and cost effectively for everyone. So we do have electricians or electrical engineers on our team that also look at what would be the electrical requirements. What we're talking about today really is new buildings, but for when the conversation transitions to existing buildings, what kind of panel upgrades, service upgrades, if any, will be required? What are some creative design solutions to try to avoid that? When it comes to rates, I mean, we're seeing rates escalating on the gas side as well. And as we move towards electrification, those customers on the gas side are going to become fewer, meaning that a lot of the fixed costs that utilities have to maintain their gas system, it's going to be spread across a smaller group of people, meaning they can expect their gas bills to go up. So, we're seeing prices increase on both sides, and it's certainly something that we are incorporating into our cost effectiveness studies to make sure that we're not creating undue burden, especially for families that are already experiencing financial hardships.
Thank you, Myra.
Thanks, Myra. I do want to emphasize that the best predictions we've seen show gas rates rising as fast or faster than electricity rates. I think the electricity rates get more news than the gas rates. But also recognize the other costs that are associated with the use of gas in terms of health impacts and those issues. And I guess lastly, there is the perception that electric heat and in particular is much more expensive. And that is largely because of past appliances and electric resistance heaters were inefficient. Modern heat pumps are much more efficient than gas appliances. So the cost differential is not as you would expect it to be. Thanks much.
Anthony, one other area that we probably want to talk about is future ownership of homes that aren't already pre-wired for either heat pump water heaters or electrical vehicle charging units, and what the cost is even to commercial buildings and sites. The cost after the fact is quite a bit, 4 times more than if we did it up front. That is another issue that we need to think about in the conversation, is the cost in the future and future dollars to install some of these elements when we're building, and the cost difference there. And so that's another area to talk about. And also just the technology and efficiency in the technologies, both PVs, heat pumps, heat pump heaters, battery backup, all of these items. And so I just wanted to add that last piece there. But excellent, Enrique, that was a good one. Good.
Okay, I am now going to promote Kathy Batat as the panelist. Kathy, please accept the promotion invitation and unmute yourself.
You're muted, Kathy. Welcome.
Thank you. I am my name is Kathy Batat. Very nice to be here. I'm a resident of Hillsborough, and I wanted to share that this month our city council approved REACH codes to require electric space heating and electric water heating for all new construction and major remodels. So we're a very different community than Gilroy. But last night also the town of Belmont approved its first reading of its REACH codes that, and they are building a lot of affordable housing, multi-family housing, and their REACH code, if approved, ultimately, it received its first vote, would require that all new multi-family and commercial buildings be all electric with limited exceptions. In addition, you might know that Half Moon Bay is considering all electric building code for new construction and major remodels, and a gas termination by 2045. So just, want to encourage your city to to listen to the community, of course, but we really have very little time to waste as, as a state, as a country, and our state's not moving fast enough. So it's going to have to be the local governments that start showing that this is really possible. And so I encourage you to go as far as you can for your community. And, because just, in California, buildings are responsible for 40% of greenhouse gas emissions and, overall. And, methane is a problem, both because of the leaks and the health aspects, as well as because methane is so much more powerful than carbon, although it doesn't stick around as long. So I just encourage Gilroy, I support Gilroy and your efforts, and I just wanted to share some of that with you. So thank you.
We appreciate it, Kathy. Thank you.
Okay, I'm now going to promote Bruce Nigel. Bruce, please accept the invitation and unmute yourself.
Welcome, Bruce. I think you're still muted.
You're still muted, Bruce.
How about now?
There you are. Welcome,
Okay.
Bruce.
Thank you. First, I want to thank Gilroy for going forward with this, joining the club of those of us that have already moved ahead in regards to making things electric. A couple of things that came up during the course of the discussion that I think are worth highlighting. First off, there's a discussion about health and the Stanford study. I want to be very specific about one of the statistics that came out of that, and that is that homes that have gas for cooking have 42% higher incident of asthma-based symptoms in children. That's a pretty stark statistic and is really a concern. And it especially shows itself when you have smaller kitchens, which are less affluent members have. So it's something to watch out for and addressing that. The second thing is that there was a discussion about the efficiency and the fact that gas costs a lot less per unit of energy than electricity does. The efficiency of a heat pump is in the neighborhood of like 3 to 5 times what the efficiency of a gas heater of any sort is. Gas heater, the best you can get is 100% because of the fact that we're extracting heat instead of creating it or transforming it allows for very high efficiency rates. So the fact is, in many cases, the bills are very comparable. And so that's something that really should be understood, that indeed you can make things go forward with that. The last thing I want to talk about is something that is kind of the elephant in the room, and we've kind of hinted at it a little bit, but we're not doing this just for ourselves. We're doing this for our children and our grandchildren and their grandchildren. The recent studies that have come out from the IPCC, which is the UN Climate Committee, have indicated we have less time than they thought we had. We still have a chance to be able to make it, but it is something that's urgent. And, those of us who are concerned about the generations that are following on will need to address it. One last thing is that I think that there's been concern raised about the transition and how do we make sure that that works. And I think that the work isn't finished yet, but I think people are cognizant of the fact that it's an issue that needs to be addressed. And, I think that's something that hopefully we'll continue to work on and move forward. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and best of luck and plow on forward. We need everybody to be part of it, and the smallest among us are still very powerful in terms of getting the message across.
Bruce, thank you.
I am now promoting Tawana Carney. Please accept the invitation and unmute yourself when you're ready.
Welcome, Tawana. I think you're still muted, though.
Hi, this is Bruce Carney. It's my lovely wife's photograph. She has the paid Zoom account, so we share it.
Okay.
I want to echo something that Bruce Nagel said about what we owe to future generations, and particularly because Gilroy is a very attractive place for young families. I've been told that the median age of a Gilroy resident is under 30 years. And so many of these young people were born in the 21st century and may well live long enough to see the dawn of the 22nd century. And I think they rightfully, particularly high school students who I've talked to, have real concerns about the livability of the planet in general. And today, Gilroy has got one of the hottest summertime climates in the greater Bay Area. And what will it be like if average summer temperatures in Gilroy are 10 degrees higher in 50 years than they are today? Will it still be a place that people choose to live? There are so many things that need to happen to get to a future that will be enjoyable by today's young people. So my concern, to answer the question that was on the slide, is that Gilroy and other cities won't move fast enough because their focus is on very current parts of the solution to this puzzle. Like, will it raise the cost of a new dwelling? Will it make apartments in new buildings cost more? That feels to me like a relatively short-sighted view. And I hope that wise council members and wise staff members who advise those council members will take a longer-term view and think about equity not just through the lens of who's rich and who's poor, but through the lens of who's young and who's old. As I'm sure all of you know, there have been attempts for many years now to create some sort of a carbon tax and dividend in the United States, where there would be a tax on carbon, but it would be returned to people not based on how much carbon they put into the atmosphere, but just on a per capita basis. So someone who lives a very modest lifestyle would get a larger rebate than they paid in tax. And in fact, perhaps as many as 80% of Americans would receive a larger rebate than they paid in tax, which makes cutting your own carbon footprint a financially attractive thing to do. But if a carbon tax or carbon fee and dividend system goes into effect, say in 5 or 8 or 10 years, anybody who's living in a dwelling that requires carbon to keep it heated, requires carbon to wash clothes or cook food, is going to be stuck with a tax. And as was presented, it's so much less expensive to electrify a home or an apartment at the time it's constructed than after the fact. So that's a variety of reasons why I'm hopeful that Gilroy will join all the other cities in Santa Clara County in adopting a REACH code, and why I think it's really important for a city with such a young population to be especially mindful of the needs of those young people. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There are no other attendees that have the raised hand icon. So it looks like we're done with live questions.
We'll just give it a 10 seconds or so. Someone who might be on the fence about asking a question.
If you would like to ask a question, please use the raise hand icon.
Boy, I think almost everyone asked.
Excellent. Yeah, that was great. Let's go to the next slide. So someone asked this question earlier, what's the timeline look like? And so currently we're doing some community outreach. We'll do then we'll do a council study session. We'll get some information, some feedback, maybe some more questions about in which directions we want to go. We'll do some additional analysis and outreach. The City of Gilroy will continue to work with our different partners, both in the development community, our residents, our external customers, and then we'll formulate something. We'll go back for council for consideration. So we're sitting right now about May. So we have some months and we have some work ahead of us, but our goal is to eventually get the REACH codes and the adoption of the building codes into adoption for January 1st, 2023. And so we will have to be in front of council no later than the second meeting of council in November is kind of like our last date for the building codes. Now the REACH codes, we would like to have that more solidified early on, but this is kind of like the rough REACH code adoption timeline. Okay, next slide. These are just some resources, from Bay Ren home program, the Tech Clean California, the SVC Future Fit heat pump water heater rebate, other resources for all electric designs, really help designers, engineers, builders, developers with these all electric buildings. Just start educating themselves on this stuff. A lot of them know about it, but it's somewhat new in certain areas. And also the building electrification technology roadmap kind of shows why it's important for having electrical vehicle charging stations. As more and more people are buying electrical vehicles, it's getting more and more difficult to find charging stations. And so we kind of have to keep up with demand and supply on the electrical vehicle charging station. So next slide, please. We want to say thank you all for joining us tonight, for your input. It's valuable. It's extremely valuable to us. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to Anthony Yulu at 408-921-6473, or his email, anthony.yulu@sbcleanenergy.org. It was a pleasure, and thank you all for your input.
Thank you.
And to the panelists and all the work that you guys did. Appreciate it.
Great input. Thanks so much.